All right, so looking like a little bit of a wide open end here, Perry. Maybe just a little bit of nerves here on this championship Monday. Of course, both of these teams having experience at the U21 championships, but never really being able to break through and make it into the playoffs. So I'm sure it's an exciting result for them already to be able to qualify for this playoff Monday, but you just got to take it one game at a time now, try and do everything you can to win each and every one of these games, and maybe just a little bit of nerves. We've already seen a couple misses here, a throw through there by Team Steele and a rollout by Team Warner, so maybe just taking the opportunity here to play a wide open, and hopefully Team Steele is looking to secure the blank in this first end and just get your feet under you here on this playoff Monday.
Absolutely, man. Now, given your 4 years in the championship run, did you play a tiebreaker?
Never at the provincial championships. There was one time that I was the third seed coming into the semifinal. Actually, pardon me, that is not true. If I go back to my first U21 championship at the Gananoque Curling Club, I did find myself in a tiebreaker game, which I lost to Ben Bevan. And that was my first U21 provincial championship, and it really gave you that experience of what the playoffs is like, what it's like to compete in that do-or-die game. And I think no matter what happens here today, both teams will be able to take this experience, and it's just going to help them that much more in the future.
Yeah, from my perspective now, working on the national stage, this reminds me very much of the quarterfinal game, right, where you're down to the last eight, trying to determine the final four. If you lose the game, you're done, and you go for long. And they're exactly in the same place.
Absolutely, and of course, in the international field, you're seeing a lot more of those quarterfinal games where teams will get buys to the semi, and then there will be 2 quarterfinal games to figure out the rest of the semifinalists. So you yourself having plenty of experience. Your same playoff format as we've always had at these championships, with only the top 3 moving on, but you cannot be eliminated straight on head-to-head record because it was a 3-way tie for second place. On the women's side, we do have this tiebreaker game here today to determine the final playoff team.
And I'm sure these 2 teams appreciate the fact this tiebreakers up in this structure, because again, international said at that scale that LSU score can eliminate some of the score from the playoff competition.
Absolutely, and I believe we did see that happen, if I remember correctly, last year at the Junior World Championships with the United States on the men's side, if I remember correctly, being eliminated from playoff contention on the last shot draw. And of course, as a player, I have to say I'm not a fan of the way that they have gone about deciding to do that. I understand it because there are obviously time constraints and the amount of time that you have to complete a championship. I do understand why the decision was made, but I think every player would love the chance to fight for that final spot and get the chance to earn their place in the playoff round.
Yeah, that happened on the women's side too last year, where Team Korea finished with the same record and lost out on their LSD. That same team went on to win the women's silver medal in women's play. So again, those things are all important, those LSD scores, and also winning those games too. Again, we see that tracking of that rock that's up and over a little bit. Hold on in the side.
Maybe a little bit of a tricky spot here, rolling out right to the edge of the 12 foot. And we've seen, of course, we've been watching this sheet all week. We've seen, especially early on in games, when you get out this wide, there is still plenty of frost. So maybe a little bit of a difficult shot here to ensure that you're able to keep your shooter around. Of course, I still expect them to make contact and make this redstone disappear, but a little bit tricky to do that little bit extra to make sure that your shooter holds around in the rings.
Steele liking this shot, we're having a wall back into the middle.
And as we take a look at the lineups for these 2 teams, first up is Team Steele, representing the Port Perry Community Curling Club. Lead Rebecca Smith, second Megan Ford, third Katie Ford. The skip is Rachel Steele, alternate Michaela Robert, and coach Sean Ford. And we do see a little bit of a lineup change this morning with Rebecca Smith sitting out in this tiebreaker game. Megan Ford will move down from the second position to lead, and alternate Michaela Robertin coming in to throw the second stones.
And that's a lineup that they're quite familiar with. Michaela Robert is very experienced as at second.
Of course, having a quick conversation with the coach before this game, there isn't any kind of injury or sickness that required this lineup change. It's something that they seem to have been doing all week long, a little bit of a rotation and finding exactly what the best thing was that was working this week. So sticking with the lineup that they felt they had the best chances with this week, and hopefully looking to come up on the top side of the scoreboard in this game.
So Rachel Steele's first stone here in first end. Looking to hit and stick.
Rachel Steele with the hammer, hoping to hit and stick here to not give Madeline Warner the opportunity for the free draw. Of course, we've seen this happen a lot, especially early in the games. On that skips first rock, just rolling out maybe a little bit, and we might actually see that happen here. And it's a little bit tough because it does give the opportunity to the opponent, as we will see here. It's going to give the opportunity for Madeline Warner to take this free draw into the rings, and especially when we're talking about a tiebreaker game and trying to get your feet under you, these opportunities for these open shots can really help you get that much more comfortable. So we'll see if that affects Madeline's confidence as we move forward into the rest of this game.
Yeah, and we did see that in a few games over the last 2 days, where even into the 6th and 7th end, the back end players skip, especially not even feeling the draw. So good for Madeline to be able to get sense of her draw away.
And this one maybe looking a little bit heavy, although going off the line it will be a bit of a fresh path. So we'll see if this holds on for her, and it does. So Rachel Steele will have to execute the removal of this redstone and the roll out of the rings in order to secure her blank end and hold the hammer into the second.
Again, good discussion at the front end with what time they were expecting to throw, what they expect this rock to do.
So final shot here in the first end, kicking off our championship Monday. It is Rachel Steele attempting to peel this rock out and secure her blank end. This is really curling up. They're going to have to work hard on this one. No, so she will nose it and be forced to take her single point. Team Steele will have a 1-0 lead going into the second end here of our tiebreaker action over Team Warner. Team Warner will look to bounce back with the hammer here in the second end, and maybe a little bit of nerves there here to start this day, do you think?
I'm not so sure it's much the nerves. I think it's just, where the broom has to be put down, the weight they have to throw. I think she threw the weight she wanted, but then the broom a little bit tighter, expecting that maybe that rock would hold up a little bit, and it didn't.
Absolutely. So no real panic early out of her hand either. So obviously they like the way she threw it, and maybe just a little bit fresh still here in the first end and just getting caught a little bit as that rock does curl up to the nose. So we'll see here whether Rachel Steele decides to push the issue here against Madeline Warner here in the second end, and it looks like they might be okay with having another open end as she does call the draw to the top four here.
And we may want to pay attention as the game goes on here, where we only have two sheets being played. We're playing on sheet 5 for this one. Sheet 6 is where the men are. Sheet 4 before her, beside us, there's no game playing at all. So the impacts of that on the ice, how that side runs on towards the far end on the intern side. Let's just see what happens on that.
Absolutely. Of course, there being 8 sheets here at the Guelph Curling Club all week long. Every team was able to play in every draw, of course, with 4 men's games and 4 women's games. So I imagine it would have gotten quite warm out there with all the extra bodies, but here with only 2 games going on, expect the temperature to drop and expect maybe the ice conditions to just change a little bit because of that.
Well, I spoke to the head ice maker Dave this morning about how he felt the weather was going to affect it. He didn't think there would be a substantial difference, but he was happy that it was a little cool and a little blustery out there today. Deal with the warmth that we've had in the area over the last couple of days. So should be no issues with the ice conditions.
Absolutely. Been a beautiful week here in Guelph, Ontario. Very warm outside most days, but of course, getting a little bit of rain overnight, a little bit of freezing rain, so it was an interesting drive to the club here this morning. But perhaps that just little bit of extra humidity, the little bit cooler temperatures, giving the ice maker maybe a couple more things to think about. But they've done such a great job. I've heard so many great things from all the competitors here at the championships this week. I'm sure they'll be able to handle it very well.
Well, and as you know, as coaches and players, what we hope is it's consistent. And we know what we should expect when we're playing the ice across all the sheets, and we've seen that all week here. So congratulations to Dave and his team.
And of course, I've gotten a couple comments over the week that we do sometimes sound a little bit like a broken record here on some of the spots in the sheet. I'm sure you'll hear the same comments today about teams maybe just getting caught in a couple of spots, but I think that speaks to that sort of consistency. We've been watching the exact same sheet all week long, and we've been able to really monitor all the different paths and what ways the throwers need to throw these stones in the different paths on the sheet, and I think that speaks to just how consistent at least this one sheet that we've been watching all week has been.
And again, as we've commented, nobody's coming up.
Yeah.
So
Still waiting for that first question.
Maybe they're listening to the broadcast.
I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that. All right, so another wide open end here, and I think maybe just taking that extra little bit of time to ease themselves into this game. I thought Madeline Warner might take the opportunity to throw up a corner guard here, especially with Rachel Steele's first stone at the end, wanting a top four, but maybe slipping a little bit deep into the back of the rings. Thought she might take the opportunity if she was comfortable to throw up a corner guard, but feeling that she wants to play a little bit more of an open end here. And we've seen both teams trading hits back and forth.
And again, that turn in of the handle a bit, takes off, going on that inside option.
Absolutely, and looking over at the men's semifinal action, it was Team McNamara being forced to a single point in the first end. 1-0 Team McNamara over Mooibroek. And Team Mooibroek will try to bounce back with the hammer here too.
So is it, this was just for London?
And I have to say, Perry, I think we're going to be in for a very exciting day of curling. You know, I'm certainly excited. You know, getting the opportunity, of course, being very fortunate in my own playing career to play in a number of these championship final days. Always an exciting games to be played and always exciting action. All of these games, in my experience, tend to be a little bit of roller coasters of emotions. And it can sometimes really come down to which team is best able to handle that pressure, keep themselves calm in a tense situation, and those will be the teams that come up on top come the end of today.
Agreed. If you can manage those emotions in the moment, because they will go up and down.
Absolutely, especially if you're either of these teams and you start plotting out your path to a possible championship here today. You're going to need to win the tiebreaker, the semifinal, and the final. So you're looking at possibly 30 to maybe even 33 ends of curling. In all likelihood, not all of those ends are going to go your way. There's going to be 1 or 2 bumps in the road in order to get yourself to that championship. And it's just that patience and that ability to accept, sort of roll with the punches that come to you and just do the best that you can to get yourself into a good situation come the end of each game.
Yeah, I'll go back to that conversation about being in a tiebreaker or not. This could be a long day for these two teams, having to play potentially 3 games, making through this game and through the semifinal as well. That mental ability to focus is going to be key.
Of course, not only mentally, but physically, the fatigue. We'll keep an eye out if that does come into play if either of these teams do move on to our final later today. Of course, already playing 7 10-end games this week, now having to play 3 more to possibly win the championship can be a large toll on the body if you haven't been doing everything that you can all week in order to take care of yourself. So something else to keep in mind as we move forward today.
Well, they do have a experience with 3-game day already in Peninsula, so having done that, should not be a problem.
Can you top yellow?
So looking at the lineup for Team Warner, representing the Listowel Curling Club, we have lead Shannon Warner, second Brianne Donegan, the third is Sarah Bailey, skip Madeline Warner, and coach Bruce Cox. Just a little bit of a miscue there by Katie Ford rolling out on that stone. Still in a decent spot. I think it's going to be fairly difficult for Madeline Warner to utilize that yellow stone. Going to have to make a good draw out to the wings in order to use it. Of course, both of these teams we did see on our broadcast here earlier in the week. Of course, it was very early, just the first two draws of the championship. So, do you think it affects them at all, the fact that they haven't been on this sheet? Of course, with this being a tiebreaker, normally in the playoffs, you will get the chance to select your own rocks from anywhere in the club, from the rocks that you found most comfortable working with. But here, this being a tiebreaker and not a true playoff game, these teams not getting the opportunity to select the rocks, so being stuck with the rocks that we've seen here on sheet 5 all week, do you think that affects them at all? Do you think they look back to maybe some of the notes that they took on day one of these championships? Or do you think maybe they've possibly even been watching a few more of our broadcasts and some of our comments in order to take some more notes on the rocks here?
Well, I would certainly hope that somebody's been listening to us. But again, I think they'll remember game 1 and game 2 and see some of the differences, because again, we had them in game 1 and game 2. But I think they're going to hope that the experience they've gained across all the sheets they play they're going to be able to take into this game and replicate that. And then I guess the consistency we've seen inside this event with these sheets.
This rock maybe a little bit heavy, but looks like it could dig in for them. And it unfortunately will not, just sliding through the ring, so maybe a possible opportunity here for Madeline Warner to push the envelope a little bit, possibly look to score her 2 points here in the second, and with now 2 yellow rocks sitting behind not only behind the tee line, but behind the rings themselves. Madeline Warner can get this pretty close to any of them, then of course it won't be an entirely difficult shot, but it will make it a bit more tricky for Rachel Steele to remove from play. So the skip, Madeline Warner, calls her home Burlington, Ontario, and currently attending McMaster University. Some of her outside interests include yoga and soccer, so a multi-sport athlete out here today. And we've seen that from a number of the teams here this week.
Madeline trying to draw down into this little pocket that's been created here from those 2 shots. To be tracking well.
This looks like it's going to be pretty close. Maybe not quite getting the amount of curl as Madeline would have liked to see from that stone, but still in a decent spot. Unfortunately with it, maybe not quite getting that much curl. Giving Rachel Steele the opportunity here to maybe hit this just off the nose and keep her own stone in maybe a difficult spot for Madeline to remove.
Risk and reward, right?
Absolutely. Knowing that risk that you took by throwing that shot, I expected them to be maybe a little bit closer on that, considering that Madeline did throw the draw to the wing in the last end on that side of the sheet, but maybe just taking a little bit too much ice. Also possible that the ice could be straightening out maybe a little bit as it continues to be worked in as we throw more stones here in this game.
We've seen this all week where 2, 3 shots down starts breaking and straighten it up. And maybe we might be referring to this, working hard to try and keep it from jamming on the back. Yep. And we do get the jam, but it might still be in. Very close.
They're taking a very close look at it. You hear the quick comment there by Madeline Warner that she does think that red stone is in the rings. So bringing the weight down here, calling for 10 seconds. So sounds like a good control weight here to ensure that they do remove this yellow stone. Maybe try to be a little bit careful here. We have seen a couple of Rachel's rocks down this path over curl now. You do have that catcher on the outside too, so you do have the opportunity to maybe hit this a little bit thinner on the high side. So final shot here in the second end, attempting to capitalize on a missed opportunity by Rachel Steele in order to remove this yellow stone and score her 2 points. This one looking very wide early, Perry. This definitely has quite a bit of work to do in order to make contact. Fortunately, she won't. Look like quite a bit of weight there, so maybe just kicking out a little bit harder than she would have wanted.
The weight and release issues. Anyhow, single point scored by Team Steele, and they'll carry a 2-0 lead into the third inning.
Don't start.
Scott.
We're going to have a bit of a fair play timeout here while we deal with small player issues. You may have noticed that in the previous end, one of the players came out and was having a small issue that they were dealing with. Now the team is going to discuss the impacts of that.
And early, just hearing from some of the whispers floating around the club, possibly an injured knee. Of course, in the sport of curling, always keeping an eye out on those knee injuries can be lingering and can be quite detrimental to a player's health. So hopefully keeping an eye on what's going to happen. And the fair play timeout here is over. So we're going to return to action, and we'll update you on any word that we get as we move forward later in this game. Right, so for right now, playing as 3, and I believe, I don't consider myself an expert on the rules, but talking about it quickly, I believe they do have the opportunity to continue to play as 3 as standard. So Shannon Warner will start to throw the first 3 stones, followed by Sarah Bailey throwing the next 3, and then Madeline, of course, throwing the last 2. And I think because of the possible injury, not exactly sure what the rules state, but I'm sure there will be the opportunity for Brianne Donegan to possibly return to the game if she is continuing to, or if she starts to feel better later on.
Correct.
So the lead here today for Team Steele is Megan Ford from Niagara Falls, Ontario, currently attending A.N. Meyer Secondary School. So we've seen a number of maybe younger curlers here still in high school and competing at these championships. Of course, school is always an important balance, and luckily enough, now that these championships have moved to the holidays between Christmas and New Year's, that's no longer that much of an issue for these players. Of course, back a few years ago, used to be held after New Year's in the first couple of weeks of January, as players were starting to sort of reintegrate themselves back into that school environment. So I think it's a great decision by Curlon to change not only the timing of these championships, not only to give the teams a little bit more time to prepare for the Canadian Juniors, but also you have to look at the outside life aspect, and I just think this is an excellent time for this event to be run.
Well, too, and the impacts, a number of years ago, they put a team down in 12, they started university and college a little bit earlier, so we did university and college programs. So this time frame works really well. We'll have to see how it changes in the future.
So a bit of a missed opportunity by Team Warner here to start taking the opportunity to maybe force the issue a little bit, trying to throw up that corner guard, but they do slip into the rings, and Team Steel now taking full advantage of this opportunity so far to sit their 2 points, although still plenty of rocks to come in this end, so plenty of time for Team Warner to escape maybe a little bit of trouble here.
Never gonna hurt to move those rocks around the house to get 2 and you got 2 seconds. Hopefully, Team Warner can start to hit and roll back towards the one that just rolled over.
Absolutely. So great work by Team Steel, keeping these yellow rocks as far away as possible. This rock definitely has a little bit of movement to do. Will make contact and remove that yellow stone, but unfortunately rolling out of the rings. And we made comments all week about those tiny little errors, really needing to focus on those small things like keeping your shooter around, like making sure that you're putting your draws in as good as spots as possible. It's all those tiny little details that really represent or really separates maybe the top teams from everybody else at these championships.
Michaela Robert being asked to put another rock at the top of the house.
This kind of maybe going against exactly what we were talking about. Of course, without the hammer, you do want to draw play towards the center of the rings as much as you can, and maybe put something in Madeline Warner's way if she ever does have to draw the 4-foot. Although I think with that rock being not a great spot back forward, there's not really much of an opportunity to put a great guard on that. I think maybe would have been a better option there to possibly split the rings. Of course, you worry so much about whenever you group those 2 yellow stones, putting them close to each other as close to a line as possible. Always the opportunity for Team Warner to walk up and possibly make the double on those yellow stones to get out of trouble.
Hopefully Sarah Bailey can hit and roll here. And this one is playing hard. We get the roll, but perhaps rolling all the way out. No, Rachel can't get it out. Again, we'll try and hit and stick with that back when we keep the 2 rock advantage in the house.
And an excellent sweep there by Shannon Warner. Of course, we get the prime seating here this week, seated right behind the sheet, and getting a good look at some of the lines as the players are throwing. Sarah Bailey looking quite a bit tight on that line, but of course we've talked about in these paths, as they get worked in, they continue to get straighter and straighter, and I think that's great tolerance there by Sarah Bailey to understand that you do have the opportunity to come out maybe a little bit tight and allow your sweepers to hold it.
And good work by the front end sweepers of Team Steel to hold that one. Get it, retain it in the house.
I think with that rock being so far back, no longer the opportunity to really play any kind of a draw, although maybe Madeline's going to try and prove me wrong here. It looks like I thought she might walk up and take the opportunity to possibly make the double and get out of this end. Looks like she's not comfortable or doesn't want to maybe waste a couple more ends here and try to blank. It looks like she wants to force the issue a little bit earlier in this game, so I'm going to try and put a draw in a good spot here. Try to force a tough run back out of Team Steel. I don't know, I'm not entirely sure if I love this call here, Perry. This early in the game when you're still trying to adjust to maybe the speeds of the different paths and maybe still adjusting on how to put rocks exactly where you need them to be.
Again, talking to some weak odd versus 8 ends, we're doing this in the 3rd end.
This is a great sweep there by Shannon Sarah Bailey getting up and sweeping her own stone to help Shannon Warner and getting it far enough to sit shot, but maybe not the most optimal place. Would have liked to get that a little bit farther in order to not leave quite as easy a run back here.
Just about any contact with that yellow rock. It moves red as well.
Looking over at the men's semifinal action, it was Team Mooibroek coming back with a 2 in the 2nd end, so they take a 2-1 lead into the 3rd end of play against Team McNamara.
the execution. I think he got that little short run back. Now I think Madeline will be in the position before having to deal with that front line. Maybe trying to handle those two out.
Absolutely, and I think it would just be maybe a little bit more of that perspective to understand that even if you made a good draw, you were likely going to find yourself in this situation anyways. So why not start trying to double those rocks a little bit earlier to give yourself a couple more chances to come away from this end with the blank. This rock close, so Shannon Warner being asked to sweep to try and hold the line. This one looking very close to possibly making the double. Absolutely, so Madeline Warner hoping that that rock would curl up just quite doesn't and jams on the back of the rings. So continued opportunity for Team Steel to make this hit and roll, try to separate these yellow stones as much as possible in order to go for the force against Team Warner here.
Here for Rachel to keep her shooter in the ring. Keep the pressure on, try and get a force out of the center.
It's like maybe not quite gonna get. Actually, that rock jumps off quite a bit more than I expected it to. Getting an excellent roll over to the side of the rings. Of course.
Screw that weight up a bit. That's why we got that roll.
And possibly a little bit of a gear effect, how you sometimes hear when it comes to curling, because it was the outturn, the tendency for the rock is to jump a little bit more the direction that it did.
Some social media fans like to hear that they were looking for a little description of what you're doing.
And so, yeah, so what that really means, I believe, when people use it is that the rock will have the tendency, because the sides of the rocks themselves aren't completely smooth like you might see on a pool table or a billiards table, they are very rough. So when they do make contact, the tendency of the shooter rock is to jump off or push itself off that stone in the direction of the turn. And we see this here, so this should have the tendency to jump towards the center line. And getting a little bit of a roll there, so
She was hopeful of potentially getting jammed.
absolutely not quite getting as much roll, so still plenty of room here for Rachel Steele, but always having to be aware of that back yellow stone to not get the jam that she's trying to avoid.
Again, so that was 9-5 is really good shot.
And I think that's maybe a little bit of that experience now that we're getting to the end of the week. Start of the week, we were seeing more 10 or 9-5, so a little bit of those higher weights on these kinds of shots earlier in the week when they were still trying to adjust to the ice surface underneath them. Now that we're on to our championship Monday, of course, both of these teams playing 7 games, being very comfortable with the ice surface here at the Guelph Curling Club. So bringing those weights a little bit down more just to increase your chances of trying to keep your shooter around.
From Rachel's perspective, I was a man from the girl. They knew that they were going to need.
Absolutely. So 2 options here for Madeline Warner. Of course, the opportunity to play the open draw on the forefoot, deciding she would rather play a very similar shot to what she did on her first. So attempting to make the hit and roll here to score her 1 point here in the third end of this tiebreaker. Rock tracking a little bit straight, though definitely has a little bit of work to do. Looks like it will sit down. So it is a single point here for Team Warner in the third end. Team Steel now with the 2-1 lead. Going into the fourth end of play, and of course we'll also have the hammer here in tiebreaker action Monday morning at the 2020 Curl On Under 21 Men's and Women's Provincial Championship here in Guelph, Ontario. Of course, three ends of very wide open action. How long do you think we're going to have to wait here to maybe see a guard be put up, maybe see these teams really work on their rock positioning and trying to get some good angles?
Well, one team still, I think they're thinking about the fourth end and taking their opportunity to try and extend that lead to throw one to the fifth end. So perhaps we'll see Rachel put up a corner guard and take advantage of that hammer here on the fourth end.
Absolutely, and I don't think we're going to have to wait long. Of course, Madeline Warner trying to get that guard up last end and slipping into the rings. So she makes the same call here, maybe coming up a little bit lighter than they would have liked, but still a great center guard. So possibly now the opportunity to get a couple of rocks in play here, although it looks like Team Steel really not wanting to take on the risk of this and drawing to the open side. Haven't really seen this call played here too much this week. Of course, it is viable. It is a way of trying to keep play away from that center guard. Maybe trying to keep things a little bit more open and going for your blank.
Oh, we've got a real fast one. First rock, and then going back to the traditional.
Maybe halfway through the
They get in the right spot. It really forces
I'll sit over there. I'm not ready to sit down yet.
I think as their skills become better and better, and you start to get to this championship Monday, of course, all these teams are very good. I think more often than not, you're just going to see teams ignore that stone over on the side and try to force the issue around the center guard, as we're seeing Team Warner do here. Line looking very good here, finishing quite well around this guard. The sweepers are trying to get it to a good spot. They do. That rock is dead buried behind that center guard. In a great position, top 8. So now pressure on Team Steel here to try and get a good angle on that stone.
Freeze attempt from Megan Ford. Very patient.
A little bit heavy here. Looks like it will bump off that stone.
Yep. So then trying to see the perfect way.
That's the break.
The opportunity right back here for Team Warner, attempting to try to make a good hit and roll around this center guard. And I think if they can make it really good, it'll be a lot of pressure on Team Steel, although this rock, maybe a little bit wider. Unfortunately, a missed opportunity there. Will roll out and allow Team Steel the opportunity to hit the now slightly open rock to sit their 2 points. Possibly the first of many stones that we may see track a little bit straight down that spot today. A little bit of miscommunication there between the two ends of the sheet, but just the second opinion there by the skip Rachel Steele, letting them know exactly what weight they would like them to throw. Looking a little bit solid here. Definitely needs to come up if they want to get to the nose. And they will. So get a little bit of a roll out to the wing, making things a little bit tougher if you're Team Warner to try and make a good hit roll. Of course, a couple options here too. They could make the really good hit roll around the center guard, but always the opportunity to maybe hit this rock a little bit thinner and roll all the way across the rings in front of that other yellow stone.
side, because when you work hard, you will get this more nice.
He's from that. Yeah.
This will make contact with that other yellow rock. Unfortunately, it will not. Would be possible. The opportunity there if you're Madeline Warner to try and get something a little bit more out of that rock and try to maybe call the sweeper off to catch it a little bit thinner to make the double, but unfortunately will roll just over the top. So now if you're Team Steel, taking the opportunity, it looks like here to draw the other open side of the rings and sit there easy too. Of course, always the option to maybe try and be a little bit more aggressive here, go around that center guard if you really wanted to go for your three, but it looks like Rachel Steele maybe just comfortable with taking her wide open easy two here.
That's the beginning of the game. If I got to extend that lead 4-1, before you go back to that side on the side, now advantaging them.
And now looking over at men's semifinal action, it was Jordan McNamara with the open draw to the 8-foot in the third end, but unfortunately slipping a little bit deep to the back 12, so they do give up a steal of two to Team Mooibroek. Down now 4-1 in the fourth end, and of course we talked a little bit when we saw Team Mooibroek about their upweight ability and their ability to defend the lead, so it's going to be a tough task over there if you're Team Mooibroek to get back into this game, I think.
Again, let's remember the Team McNamara stealing those last 3 ends, so they're probably going to finish the thing that it's the middle part of the game for them. They've already just manage the scoreboard this year. They'll have the fourth end, if they get a 2, get back to 21, it would be a good place for them.
Absolutely, and we'll continue to give you updates from that sheet all game long as the scores come in. A little bit of a miss there by Sarah Bailey. Unfortunately, just nosing that stone, not getting any kind of a roll. So, really, Team Steel can just sort of sit back here and wait, just keep continuing to make these easy hit and sticks. And it's going to really come up to Team Warner to come up with a good one to get out of trouble.
So make your opponent make the hard shot, right?
Absolutely. If you always have the opportunity to sit back and make the easy ones and just wait for your opportunity against your opponent, make them play some tougher shots and hopefully get a couple misses, although this one tracking out a little bit wide and rolling out. So opportunity handed right back here to Team Warner here in the fourth end to possibly hit that yellow stone and escape. I think I have to disagree with the decision there by the team. I think it's a little bit too late now to try and push the issue here in the fourth end. I think you'd be happy to get out of this with a blank. Still plenty of game to play, and especially with the fifth end, you possibly go a little bit harder to try and force Rachel in 5 and take the hammer to the second half of the game.
Keep showing water to try and hold that line.
Now it's decision time if you're Rachel Steele. Do you walk up and you peel that card, or do you maybe try and draw one around and get something going here?
Nope, right around. Exactly what you think.
Glad we're both in agreement. Sometimes I just need to play devil's advocate here, though, Perry.
Not too much agreement.
That's not true. We did disagree on one shot. One shot yesterday.
Amanda's not coming today.
Maybe we should coach a team. We seem to be on the same page all the time. But here, final shot here by Katie Ford, attempting to make a good come around the center guard. Of course, always a little bit of risk without the hammer to go around the center, but I think this late in the end, if they can keep this rock above the tee line, I think they're going to have a great opportunity to score their 2 points. Maybe getting caught in a quick path here, and that is quite an unfortunate miss there, I think, if you're Katie Ford. Just handing the opportunity back to Team Warner. Now, if they can make a good draw, you go from getting your 2, or probably getting your 2, to maybe getting forced, or if Madeline Warner can really put one in a good spot here. If you ever get a miss by Rachel on one of her stones, a steal opportunity comes into play. So quite a big swing there. Do you think maybe just blanked mind there. If you're Katie Ford sitting in the hack, maybe a bit of miscommunication. Of course, we don't have the microphones down with the front end, but of course that path they would have had to know at this point in the game would have been right up to speed.
Katie Ford struggling a little bit with draw with one, so it's just over 50%. So trying to still figure it out.
And so opportunity here for Madeline Warner to put a draw in a very good spot to put pressure on Rachel Steele, although it looks like this rock may need to do a little bit of curling here at the end.
It's coming now. And not completely buried.
But I think that might do the job. It definitely makes Rachel decide what she wants to do here. Looks like she's going to try to play the lightweight hit. Throw this with half weight, attempt to come around the guard and remove that red stone.
You know it's going to be a good.
Definitely the opportunity to get to the inside and possibly get that little bit more of a roll under this guard if she is absolutely precise. Of course, I think she'll take a nose hit here as well, or possibly even a roll away to ensure her blank. Of course, we talk about making sure that you do want to score in the even ends and you retain the hammer, but I think at this point in fourth, still early in the game, still lots of time for that plan to go awry if you try to stick with that right now. So I think Rachel would be happy with your blank here if possible. With that pillar post to post sweep there, I think the weight was pretty good, maybe a little bit closer to board than maybe the hack that we thought she might have thrown. But with that pillar to post sweep, really straightening out the angle of that stone and just not quite getting enough finish there behind the guard in order to get that roll that they might have been looking for. If Rachel had been sure to be out to the broom on that one, then possibly you get to wait on the rock, you get a bit of a steeper angle coming around that guard to get to the inside. So Madeline Warner is going to attempt to use her last stone here to remove the yellow rock and roll behind the center guard to hopefully do her best to try and force Rachel Steele here in the fourth end of play. Needing to curl up a little bit at the end here. Looks like she might just get it on the nose though, and she does. So blank opportunity here for Rachel Steele. There's the two times that we have gotten to the last couple rocks of Rachel, maybe just not quite getting the outcomes that she would have liked. Of course, we remember the nose blank attempt in one, and the jammed rock into that allowed Maddie Warner the opportunity for 2 points. So maybe a little bit of a confidence booster here if you're Rachel Steele early in this game. So final rock here in the fourth end for Rachel Steele, looking for the blank opportunity to retain the hammer and a 1 point lead going into 5.
Well done.
So it will be Rachel Steele holding on to the hammer and the 2-1 lead going into the fifth end of play here in tiebreaker action.
I don't think she would have been unhappy if she would have nosed that, extending her lead and using it in the fourth end. So let's just see what she does comes to Rachel, whether she'll play this one clean again. Or whether she'll take
Absolutely. Maybe not the end of the world if she had nosed that stone, but I think, as you said before, I think Rachel's looking to extend her lead to 4-1 at any point. So I think she would rather take a 4-1 lead maybe later in an odd end rather than taking the one there. So great result there by Rachel Steele getting the blank. Of course, Team Warner going to try and force the issue once again this end, although Shannon is coming up a little bit light. Madeline having to go out and help Sarah Bailey get this stone as far as possible. We saw the same thing last time, and this rock maybe ending up in exactly the right spot. Which we saw Shannon slip into the rings on a guard attempt in the third end, so maybe getting a little bit spooked here in the next couple ends, taking the weight off a little bit, but I think that rock is still in a fairly good spot.
Interesting to see where that one is.
Absolutely insane. Same plan here by Rachel Steele drawing to the open side. Will be off the guard, so now maybe just trying to get as much curl as possible to keep this rock as far away from that center guard as they can.
Similar speeds that we've seen all of them.
An interesting decision here by Team Warner, of course. Having a little bit of deja vu through the first two stones of this end. The center guard coming up in pretty much exactly the same spot, and Rachel Steele drawing the open side. Last end, she decided to push the envelope a little bit and play the draw around the center, and I thought here she might do the same thing. With it being an odd end, maybe try to really go a bit harder for the force here against Rachel, although we did see last end that Madeline did get into a little bit of trouble through the middle at that end. It looked like it was going to be a 2 for Team Steele most of the way, so possibly maybe just not wanting to risk that chance and just hitting this open stone to play things a little bit more conservatively here in the fifth end.
That'll play the racing strategy. Like can carry over even to the sixth end with a point.
Absolutely. The only reason you ever throw that stone to the wing is because you're trying to blank the end. So I think hitting is really playing into that strategy. I thought Madeline would try to push the issue here a little bit more.
Hi.
The lead is Shannon Warner. Calls her home in Burlington, Ontario. Currently attending the University of Waterloo and is on the varsity program there. Absolutely wonderful. Yeah, exactly. And you talk about those hit and rolls being some of the toughest shots in curling to really execute perfectly. That being maybe the first one that we've seen all game executed that well. And puts a lot of pressure here on Team Steele. Now needing to bring the weight down and to try and get enough curl to remove this red rock once it gets past the guard. And over in the men's semi, it is Jordan McNamara making the open hit and stick for their single point. Now down 4-2 to Team Mooibroek, who will have the hammer going into the fifth end.
So, again, I think the weight they had in those guys throw, maybe a little bit deeper. You're starting to see that ice with that lower pick up the curl.
Absolutely, and that's just a result of that excellent hit and roll made by Shannon Warner on her third rock, forcing the issue against Team Steele. And now with that slight miss, it will be Sarah Bailey's opportunity to throw another good guard up here, and then it's going to be maybe a little bit difficult for Team Steele to execute a plan that will possibly give them 2 points, although with that red rock in the rings, maybe being a little bit deeper, just fighting the back of the pin, always the opportunity for Rachel Steele to draw around if they leave it and possibly make a little bit of a bump to give themselves enough room to score 2. That rock, though, ending up in absolutely the perfect spot, leaving no port for a hit and no way for them to get enough curl to draw in there. So Rachel Steele quickly running up, looking for the double peel here. Robert trying to open things up for her team and giving them the opportunity to get one in there to keep this 2 alive. It's looking very close. Maybe a little bit of a missed line call there. Unfortunately, just jamming that red stone. Now giving the opportunity for Madeline Warner to maybe go a little bit harder for something here if she sees it. Possibly the opportunity to maybe draw something top 8 here, Perry. Do you think to sit 2 and really force Team Steel to come up with some excellent shot making here in the second half of this end?
I would like that call, top 12. Maybe we'll try to
Couldn't tell exactly where she tapped her broom, if she did tap for a tight guard or asking for it to come into the rings. This rock maybe over curling a little bit from where Madeline would like it, so asking for her sweepers to possibly leave it high if they could. Unfortunately, maybe slipping a little bit deeper than they would like. These two red guards now being so close together really makes this double peel that much easier to execute. So first rock coming here by Katie Ford, the vice for Rachel Steele, looking to execute this double peel and open the end wide open for Team Steele to keep the blank alive. Making contact with that second stone, but maybe just another slightly missed line call there. Not making enough contact to remove that second red rock, and now with Madeline Warner sitting 2 in the rings, this is exactly what you could have hoped for in order to try and get a force here this end. Maybe let me ask a little bit of a question to you here, Perry. With it being the Vice's last stone here, that red rock in the center, maybe not in the best position of your team, Warner. A little bit deep, slightly behind the tee line. Always the opportunity, if you do make a good guard here, for Team Steel to come down, maybe make a little bit of a freeze tap and get this 2 back into play. Would you ever think about possibly maybe drawing the open side here, sit in 3 and really trying to get the force by more of that open way by sitting the 3 points and just continuing to make those nose hits?
Yeah, I would like that. A lot of also like trying to actually bring that one more enticing them and then exchanging.
Absolutely. If they ended up on that exact same line, but maybe top 12, then maybe not leaving the opportunity for Team Steel to play this draw down to the red stone. But as is where it is, it looks like they had a quick conversation about possibly maybe trying to play the tap, although maybe not quite as comfortable with that in-turn path, and it looks like they're now looking at playing the peel and possibly making the double by removing that red stone over on the side of the rings.
Yeah, surprising that Rachel doesn't want to take that on. It's just again a little bump back or tap back on the rock sitting at the button.
Sometimes you can get a little bit caught thinking that those stones are so good simply because they are covering the pin. But I think really, especially at this point in the end, the best spot for a rock to be right now is more top button, top 4 kind of a position. And with that rock where it is, very easy to come down and make the slightest tap, not only in order to sit shot, but then that red stone is helping you because it will be a jam possibility if Madeline Warner ever tried to go down and remove it. So it looks like they're going to try to attempt the same shot here. Would love to see Madeline maybe giving your sweeper a little bit of extra weight here. You can get away absolutely with slipping into the rings on this shot. Absolutely. I think if this one ends up in the exact same spot where that guard was before, there won't be another option for Rachel Steele. She's going to have to try and do something in order to ensure her possible score. This rock slipping in a little bit deep, going 14-8 on the hot dog. Disappointed, but I'm not really sure if that's that bad of a spot. I mean, definitely is the opportunity for maybe Rachel Steele to make a double here, but I think if she does, very high possibility that the shooter may roll out of the rings and you'll be able to split the rings and get your fours. Very difficult to really remove both stones and roll to a position that would put Maddie Warner in a tough spot. So I think you've got to be a little bit happy with that spot if you are Madeline Warner. I think it does the job of going for the force here in the fifth end. You just have to be so precise with the weight, have enough to remove the two red stones, but not so much as to roll your shooter out of the rings. Just touching that top red stone, but not enough to remove it, just pushing it over to the side 8-foot. Maybe just pushing it far enough that there may not be an in-off double there if your team steals. So where's the perfect spot to put this one if your team Warner, Perry?
I would like right on the center.
Absolutely, I would love it right in front of that shot stone, just full 8 to not leave Rachel the opportunity to make the double and set shot. If you see that it's going to be fairly difficult for Rachel to score here, I still think there might be the possibility to draw down and play a swipe bump, although that is such a precise shot and executing that against 4 can become a little worrisome.
Fighting ball coming into the wood shot here on the center.
All right, so final rock here by Madeline Warner, trying to put this rock in a good spot in order to bring a steal into play, although the sweeper once again calling maybe a little bit heavy. And also definitely needing this rock to maybe curl a bit more to get to a good spot. Definitely going now. And unfortunately, maybe getting caught a little bit. I thought Shannon thought that that rock might be a little bit heavier than that. Maybe definitely being a little bit tentative to really get in there and sweep that stone. Of course, lighter is the tolerance. You don't want to slip too deep, but just not quite getting the curl that they would have liked. And I think maybe with that little bit of an early sweep to try and carry that stone, maybe would have covered a little bit more of that stone on the button.
It's pretty good. Just didn't finish up. Rachel Steele against 4. Needing to draw to the button, perhaps top attack a little bit.
So a big opportunity here for Rachel Steele to show her mental toughness, throwing against 4 red stones here with her final shot in 5, trying to come down and make a very delicate tap to score 1 point. This rock looking very close so far, curling very nicely for her. Hi, man. And an excellent shot there if you're Rachel Steele to close out the first half of this game. Scores her single point, so going into the back half it will be 3-1 for Team Steele, but Team Warner will try to bounce back here with the hammer when we return for N6 action. Right now they're going to get their 5-minute halftime break, so we can tune in to listen to see what the coaches have to say to them and what they need to do to prepare for the second half. And we will be back when action continues to get underway here in the second half of our tiebreaker game here on the women's side at the 2020 Curl On Under 21 Men's and Women's Provincial Championship.
Cheers are awful. Stretch.
So it's just when you come yeah, he saw stitches and everything. But
I'm well aware. I'm well aware.
I saw she was playing his last name. Sarah. I don't know how to pronounce it. Don't ask me. Yeah, it's French. I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't want to butcher this thing.
Take 45 seconds to break the overhead.
I don't know that.
And we are back for second half action here in the morning draw of Championship Monday here at the 2020 Curl-On Under 21 Men's and Women's Provincial Championship, coming to you live from the Guelph Curling Club in the beautiful Royal City of Guelph, Ontario. What do you take from the first half if you're these two teams? Let's start with Team Steel. What do you need to do in order to continue to have control of this scoreboard in the second half of this game?
Well, I think the team is controlled quite well, actually. At 75%. The thing is that Rachel's coming to 81 now percent of the draws. She's thrown enough of them. 80% of her hits, and she's found a hit rate she wants to keep to hit. So I think if they're playing to Rachel's strengths, your Team Steel, you're in a good spot. Two-point shot. Manage this 6-10 well, maybe force, then you'll be in a good position.
And of course, we saw a spectacular draw there at the end of the fifth, and by Rachel Steele to score her single point, throwing against 4 red stones by Team Warner. So I think if you're Team Warner, you take a little bit of a positive from that, and that you were able to put that much pressure on the other team. And I think you continue to try and do that here with the hammer to try and get that great rock positioning, put some rocks in some good spots, and if you can get a little bit of a miss by maybe Team Steel, and if you can put enough pressure on Rachel to get a little bit of a miss from her, you might be able to come back into this game and regain control of that scoreboard.
And this is where I agree. I think the team wanted a little bit of a sticker shock of Brianne Dunnigan coming out of the lineup, the team having to kind of reorientate itself, fixated on the fact that they were going to go forward with 3 people. And that last end would really give them a lot of confidence as 3 to go forward. I did talk to Brianne Dunnigan in the break.
I just kept thinking it was bust in there. You can't get it.
Known issue.
You get a little tighter and it busts.
Developing as the events gone on, 7 round games into the 18. I felt a little something normal. Because it was more focused out and whatever the lineup would benefit her team.
Of course, in such a long championship can take such a physical toll on the players, and we don't want anyone risking their own physical health just for the results of this game. Of course, this is a game, but we wish Brianne all the best to heal herself up, hopefully, and maybe make a return later in today if Team Warner does advance on. But it looks like she will be out for the rest of this morning.
Oh, okay. I'm like in a perfect spot.
Alright, so the lead, Shannon Warner, I think up a little light once again on her first stone here in this, and the skip Madeline going out to help Sarah Bailey get that rock over the tee line, or the hog line, pardon me. And we may see a little bit more of aggressive action here as they're trying to put this second corner guard up a little bit tighter. Fortunately, looks like it might slip into the rings, but if they can get this buried, might not be in the worst spot. So it does slip into the rings, but as I said, mostly buried. Might be a little bit of a piece here for Team Steel to take a run at. But I think we had that conversation actually yesterday a little bit when you are throwing those 2 corner guards. Would you rather throw that high one or the tight one first? And I mentioned I think you'd love to put that high one in because you always do have the opportunity to be that little bit heavier on the second rock. And even though not getting the guard that they would have wanted does slip into the rings in a good spot so that it is buried. So Rachel Steele not going to take on the risk of trying to chase that red stone and just going to try and prove her own position on the center of the sheet.
Again, this is where the choice for Rachel was kill the Texas so maybe just kill the guardian that didn't go there in the first place.
And I thought we might see the guard go up to try and force the issue maybe a little bit more. I think that yellow rock is in a good spot. I don't think the top was entirely necessary, albeit a little bit heavy there on that stone, tapping off that rock top 8, but does hang around in the 8 foot to sit her 2 points. So I think for the time being, maybe mission accomplished with your Team Steel, but with that center so wide open now with the choice to not throw that guard, always the opportunity for Team Warner to maybe make a couple good hit and rolls and get something set up for themselves here in the 6th end. Of course, the all-important even ends as we start looking forward to the second half of this game as well. So we see the shot here by the lead, Shannon Warner. Over curling on the hit a little bit. Would have liked to get a little bit of a roll out of her yellow stone. It looks like a pretty good result so far because Team Steel does have to be careful. If they ever nose hit this red rock and don't get quite enough of a roll, they will sit third shot and allow Madeline Warner the opportunity to hit that back yellow rock and sit her 2 points in a pretty good position. And on this one early, maybe a little bit tight out of the hand. Definitely don't want to end up nosing this.
There you go.
Absolutely, and as Madeline points out there, the red rock now second shot allows them the opportunity to make a play on that back yellow if they would like. I think the opportunity is there that maybe you don't quite have to play it back 8, but just with the understanding that if you do anything else, you may not get another opportunity after a couple good shots by Rachel Steele. So I think I like this call here if you're Madeline Warner, taking the opportunity now to deal with that back 8 rock, trying to make a good hit and roll behind a couple of guards, and hopefully force another miss out of Team Steele. Just a little bit wide here out of the hand. And of course, yeah, we've seen that spot so all week long. Very release sensitive, just a little bit of an outward motion. The weight was great there. I think it was exactly what Madeline asked for, but just that little bit of an outward motion. That rock isn't going to do anything for you. And unfortunately, not getting fortunate enough to make contact with that yellow stone, even going right by. So it is Team Steele sitting shot stone, and now with throw in hand, gonna just walk up and I think smartly just peel this corner guard for the time being, considering that they are still shot stone. Looking over at men's semifinal action, of course we mentioned Team McNamara's experience of stealing against Team Mooibroek, and they do come up with a big steal of 2 in the 5th end once again to tie up the game here. 4-4 going into the 6th end. Team Mooibroek has the hammer, so of course getting very exciting over there in that game. So we're going to keep an eye out of the corner of our eyes over on the other sheet and update you as all the action comes in.
We're not watching shot action, unfortunately. Again, that hitting ability for Team Mooibroek to defend the lead obviously must be being compromised by something of Jordan's ability to feel that right ball at the right time.
Of course, we saw those. We had the story here with these two teams of maybe 2 different weeks, and I think a little bit for Team Mooibroek as well, just maybe in the opposite way. Of course, them starting going undefeated 5-0, then losing the morning game yesterday to Team McNamara, and then losing once again in the afternoon draw to Team Rooney. So, of course, ending up with a pretty good record of 5-2 to get themselves into these semifinals, but maybe trending the wrong way going into today. And we'll see if they're able to bounce back in the second half of that game. But going back to our game here, maybe a little bit of just a slight miscue there by Team Warner, rolling towards the other red stone, starting to group those rocks, and of course then always the possibility of a double for Team Steele. Maybe got a little bit lucky though of where they bounced that other red stone, maybe not quite the opportunity for a double as they sit right now.
Yep. Yeah, we can see it today. We'll just bucket all of it.
There we go again, the other one. So,
Of course, we saw with Team Warner that this rock won't do anything if you set it out, so trying to maybe get some kind of a plan B there to get the other red stone out, and they are successfully able to do that, although I maybe had a little bit of a nightmare there if your Team Steele watching that red stone spin towards the back of the rings. Looked like it was going to end up making the perfect freeze on that back yellow rock, but fortunately enough for them, just getting a little bit of a spin out of the way at the end. So still the opportunity of your Team Steele to remove that red stone, and I think you're maybe not quite fully upset with how the end is turning out here. Going to be difficult for Madeline Warner to put this rock in a good spot that doesn't allow any kind of easy double. This rock's going to have to sit down if it wants to stay in the rings. Just a little bit heavy here by Sarah Bailey. will dig in for her, so doesn't end up as second shot stone, but with where the broom was coming down, I don't really think that was even the plan by Madeline Warner. I think she understands that if Rachel hits this red stone over here by this yellow rock, very high likelihood that she doesn't make quite a big roll, and possibly there will be the opportunity for those yellow stones to end up grouped and possibly have a double on her next rock. So first rock here for Rachel Steele in the sixth then, attempting to make a delicate hit and roll to the other side of the rings in order to not give Madeline Warner a double to get out of this end.
Right, doesn't get the roll, unfortunately.
And I think maybe just getting caught a little bit from what she'd seen earlier in the end. Of course, we saw a couple rocks by both teams tracking very straight. We saw a flash by Team Warner and a very thin hit by her vice, Katie Ford. So I think maybe thinking that that spot was a little bit straighter than it actually is, but that looked like a much cleaner throw by Rachel, whereas the other two may have flared theirs out a little bit on release. So a clean throw by Rachel Steele does get maybe a bit more curl than she expected to get, and it does curl up to the nose and leave this nose hit double for Team Warner to keep their 2 points.
I don't think Rachel wanted to overthrow the late too, because if she did, she would have made a roll underneath that red rock.
Yeah, and I think if she threw that like the other two, she possibly gets maybe a little bit of a better result, but a very clean throw. Rock curls up for her, so the opportunity here for Madeline Warner to make the double. Shannon Warner on it, trying to hold the line, and an excellent shot there to make the double, stay on the nose, sit their 2 points. Although always the double opportunity here if you're Rachel Steele to try and save this end and not give up 2 points to Team Warner.
Could be a long double attempt. The angle is not bad for it. Perhaps a similar shot to the one she just threw.
Absolutely, I would expect to see a very similar weight here.
Because she could afford to roll over in front of it.
Absolutely, so a couple of options here if you're Rachel Steele. Looks like she's going to go pretty hard for the double, and I think I agree with that. I think at this point, with only one rock to come in this end, you have to take a pretty good crack at this double takeout and try your best to avoid giving up the 2 points. Skip Rachel from Port Perry, Ontario, currently attending the University of Guelph, so may have a little bit of experience playing here on this ice all year long. But her final stone here in the sixth end, attempting to make a critical double here to avoid giving up 2 points. Keepers on it the whole way, maybe just getting a little bit tight out of her hand there, because calling them on immediately out of her hand. So just nosing it, getting a little bit of a roll. So the opportunity here for Madeline Warner to tie up this game after 6 with 2 points if she can successfully remove this yellow stone and hang her shooter in the rings.
And the best outcome for Team Warner.
Absolutely. I think coming into this game, maybe a little bit of that talk with their coach during the fifth end break would have been to have that little bit of patience going into the second half. Yes, you find yourself down 2, but still plenty of game to go with 5 ends to play, and especially in these do or die games, we talked a little bit about those roller coaster of emotions. That can come out when you're in these kinds of a situation, so I'm sure the talk was a little bit about just being patient and waiting for your opportunities, and here's one right here in the 6th. Unfortunately, this might have to do a little bit of curling. Got out a little bit on the release. Will it come up enough for her?
Yes, it does.
And it will. Removes that yellow stone and holds on in the 8-foot to score her 2 points and tie up this game. So this is going to be a very fun last 4 ends to watch, I think, Perry. I'm Matthew Hall alongside Perry Marshall here bringing you the action all day long from these provincial championships as we take the time to finally crown our Ontario champions and find out who will represent this province at the 2020 Canadian Juniors held in Langley, BC. But for right now, still 4 ends to go in this tiebreaker action. Going to be a fun finish.
Now, when you were playing BC last year, did you get a chance to play in Langley?
I did actually. I have played at the club where our home club was the club that will be hosting the Canadian Juniors this year, so plenty of experience there. An excellent facility where the curling club and the arena are actually in the same building, so you can walk between the curling club and the arena without having to go outside. It's an excellent facility, and we know that I know the people who are in the host committee, they're going to do a fantastic job. Already have experience hosting a championship not that long ago in that province. Of course, the 2017 Canadian Juniors being held in Victoria on the island, and that was an absolutely stunning championship in a beautiful city, and I'm sure they're going to do just as well this year for the championships in Langley. Well, so for the Canadian Juniors, because the men and women both play at the same time, they need about 8, 9, or 10 sheets in order to play the number of games that are required. So they will go back and forth between the arena and the club. There will be 5 sheets in the arena, one of them being the televised TSN sheet that will be televised for the playoffs, and there will also be 3 to 5 sheets in the curling club that will be used, and there will be excellent spectator viewing areas as well, and going to be a lot of fun for everyone involved, I think.
That's great. It sounds like the Langley Club might be the home of other future events if they have that experience.
And of course, Langley, the home of a very successful junior curler, Tyler Tardy.
Your skip from last year.
My skip from last year, and himself a 3-time Canadian junior champion, although foregoing his final year here in this last year with the Canadian Championships being held in his home club. So an interesting decision, but I think on their end, I totally understand. They've had so much success at the junior ranks, and I think it's time for them to make that move up to the men's in order to improve their own game. I think they're right on the cusp of maybe breaking through in the men's division.
And BC's a bit wide open, and one team will be able to do that, so why not take advantage of that?
Absolutely. Jim Cotter, the perennial favorite out there in BC, but of course keeping close tabs with my previous teammates. They've had the opportunity of playing and beating Jim Cotter a couple times this year, but of course Jimmy, you know, returning the favor in a couple other games. So I think it's going to be a fun tankard out there in BC, and a fun tankard at all the provinces actually as we move through this playdown season. Here in Ontario, still 2 more chances for teams to qualify for the men's tankard being held in Cornwall later in January. Of course, the Cornwall Championships will also be broadcast by Title Sports Live. So after these championships, we invite you to join us then at the Cornwall Community Centre as the men's and women's battle it out to represent Ontario at the tankard and the Scotties.
And we hope to see Matthew Hall playing and not having commented.
I still got a little bit of work to do, though. Of course,
2 shots at it.
Yeah, didn't have quite the weekend we would have liked in the first qualifier, but of course that's why you get your 3 chances to get there. So hoping to have good weekends either in Quinte or at our own home of the KW Granite Club in order to qualify for that tankard.
So a little bit of challenge here, trying to get around that yard. It looks like a pretty simple path, but we've come up a little bit light and then a little bit wide.
And this is a path that we have seen all week long and a couple times already this game, so I was a little bit surprised to see. I mean, it was a little bit of a tight port, but I thought more than enough room for both of those teams to make it through. Team Steel over curling on their one, which I was a little bit surprised about as we saw these paths straightening out as the game goes along. And then Team Warner getting caught in that straight path and just wrecking on the wide guard. So leaving the opportunity for Team Steel to make an excellent come around and
Run out of rings.
unfortunately, yeah, looks like a great line from our end, but looking at the overhead, just short of the rings. So maybe a little bit of a missed opportunity there by Michaela Rivera. Great throw, but would have liked a couple more feet there in the throw.
see if Team One can make that adjustment and really get around those staggered guards.
Taking a look over at the men's semifinal action, interesting position going on in the rings right now as Team Mooibroek having to draw against 3 Team McNamara Stones. So after taking an early 4-2 lead, all the momentum seems to be going Team McNamara's way, and the sweepers are on. Skip Sam Mooibroek's shot here, really having to go to get it far enough. Coming into the rings now, need a good piece of the forefoot, but unfortunately will come up light. Top 8, so it is a steal of 1 by Team McNamara to take a 5-4 lead after 6 ends. So big swing of momentum after being down 4-1, now leading 5-4 going into the 7th end action. Team Mooibroek will look to bounce back with the hammer there. So back to our game here. Fairly good come around by Team Warner, slipping in maybe a little bit deep than they would have liked. So the opportunity for Team Steel, if she wanted to come around and maybe make a draw on that stone, but I think this is a very experienced call here we're seeing by Rachel, realizing that that rock on the button isn't the one that's going to cause you issues. These staggered red rocks are the only ones that are ever going to cause you problems this end. So quickly running up and trying to make the double peel, and maybe not quite removing 2 red stones, but does move them off the center. So maybe now a little bit more room if you're Rachel Steele to ensure that you do have the opportunity to score a point this zone.
A bit unfortunate, that rock seemed to track well, but then straighten up. Get a little messy, a little junky in that here.
And the third for Team Warner is Sarah Bailey, from the Listowel Curling Club, of course, but making her home in Brampton, Ontario. Currently attending Brock University, and an interesting fact, she's a sailing teacher and instructor in the summer.
Good test today.
Yeah.
So cold.
Of course, the weather making a little bit of a turn. It's been a beautiful week all week. Nice and warm here in Guelph, Ontario, but last night getting a little bit of freezing rain continuing on this morning, and plenty of winds out there as well. So an interesting drive to the club this morning, but glad everyone made it here safe for these games. And should be fun going into the last 4 ends here, and great spot there for Team Warner for that guard. I really don't see, it's very close, there may be a port there, but it's very tough to tell if there is enough room to fit a stone through there. Rachel Steele gonna give it a go though, and I think this is a smart call. Because even, obviously if you make it through that port, that's absolutely excellent, but off one way or the other, make it a little bit lucky and move some of those rocks out of her own way. So I think this is a smart call, as long as you're close enough to ensure that you can wiggle through that hole if you do tick one of those stones. Again, like I said, would have liked to ensure that you could have wiggled through that hole and maybe moved the stones at least out of the way of that center. But they yellow pretty much now in the exact same spot still. So Team Warner, the opportunity to throw the exact same shot they just did and try and get another good guard up. I think they would love having the exact same line and maybe just slip 2 feet farther in order to really take away any kind of port opportunity for Team Steel.
Leave a little more room on this one, a little more weight. Wait for it to curl. Given Sarah Bailey here, it looks like she's getting up and sweeping right away.
Yeah, of course, with Brianne Donegan dropping out early in this game, having to get a little bit creative on those lighter shots, and they think they've been doing a great job of not. Of course, a lot of the times when you see this and teams start playing mixed doubles, you notice a lot that they will almost jump out of their slide of the moment that that rock is out of their hand, and it can really mess up your timing as a thrower to not have that follow through at the end, and you end up hurting your own execution ability. I think they've done a great job of still staying within themselves, doing everything they can to put a good throw on the stone, and then once that is completed, then getting up and going to help sweep. And then Very close on the run back attempt there by Katie Ford. Unfortunately, just jamming it in the forefoot. So really, maybe giving Rachel Steele a little bit more room to work with, but not quite solving the issues that present themselves to them quite yet.
Madeline, if you jump up that center, but you've got two run back angle raises sitting there. So there's no opportunity for Rachel.
We've had a couple options here. Of course, there is the option of drawing through that fork to try and put another rock in the ring. I think I like this call, though. That draw through the port is very difficult, and if you're ever off one way or the other, you're just going to move those stones out of the way and make it easier for Team Steel to access that shot stone in the forefoot. I think this is good for right now, although you do have to be a little bit careful, keeping an eye on those tight yellow stones. Always the opportunity for Rachel to run those back, and I'm sure she would love to dead stick it on that shot stone in the forefoot if possible.
So Madeline Warner with the first shot here in the seventh end. Again, always waiting for the room, waiting for the curl.
As long as the weight is good, this should work for her. Looks like it's going to be fairly close for line. May bump off this yellow stone a little bit, and does, but good weight so it doesn't over-roll. It ends up in a very good spot, blocks up that port, but of course, as we talked about, I'm sure Rachel Steele is going to take a good long look at these run backs here. I think the one closer to the center line might be an easier one to run back into that red stone. The other good thing is if you ever don't quite make the run back perfectly and do roll out, you are opening up a path to the forefoot as well for her last rock. So Rachel Steele in a little bit of trouble here, gonna try and get something set up for herself by at least making this run back and removing the red stone from the forefoot. Just as we said with the men's setting, looking back at our game, maybe a little bit of swing of momentum between these two teams. Of course, Rachel making an excellent shot against 4 red stones in the 5th end. Of course, that 6th end being all Team Warner and scoring their 2 points, and now putting a little bit of pressure here on Rachel Steele with her first shot in the 7th end, attempting to make this very difficult run back stick. Looks very close. They seem to like it. Unfortunately, just hitting it a little bit too thin. Does make contact with that red stone in the forefoot, but just not pushing it far enough. So, if you're Team Warner here, where's the perfect spot? If it was me, I would love to try to put this full top 12. Do you agree with that, Perry?
I like that. I like top 12. And even just get a piece of that 12 and force her to do that angle. Raise again, put in her.
Of course, a couple things to keep in mind here. If you ever did just bite top 12, always the opportunity for Team Steel to come down, make the nose double, and actually blank the end. So I think if you are going to be in the rings, would love to be full 12 here in order to make that blank a little bit tougher and possibly force Team Steel to take their 1 point. Of course, if you come up as just a tight guard as well, you're going to force Rachel into a very difficult angle run back that will likely end up in a force anyways. So going to be up to the sweeper here to really decide the weight that she's seeing out of her skip's hand to decide exactly where they want to put this stone. Final rock here for Madeline Warner in the 7th end, attempting to put quite a bit of pressure here on Rachel Steele. Ideally would love to put this top 12 and sit 2 points.
Again, room and wait. Wait for the curve. Still out there on that. Ooh. Bumps up that yellow one, so a huge swing in momentum. It's open for a hit and the yellow into the rings.
We've seen that a number of times here by Madeline Warner, ending up just wide out of her hand and just constantly having to wait for the curl, and it's worked up for her enough because she's had excellent weight control and enough to get that curl late. But with that one, maybe just a little bit heavier than they would have wanted, or at least close weight to get top 12, and just not quite getting the curl that she needed to get off that yellow stone. So Pushes it into the rings, and the chance here for Rachel Steele to make this hit through the port to score her 2 points and regain control in this game. I'm not liking this out of her hand, calling the sweepers right off. This one definitely needs to curl off that red stone. Looks like it's going to make contact, and it will. And maybe a little bit fortunate to hit that red thin enough to not push it into the rings. But a big steal of 1 point there by Madeline Warner to take a 4-3 lead after 7 ends here. Team Steele maybe will have to try to do something to stop the bleeding here, as all the momentum has swung the other way in the past 3 ends. We move forward to the 8th end action here in this tiebreaker game. Of course, loser will go home, and the winner will move on to our semifinal to face Emily Deschamps.
Just realize where she is down 1, then has the hammer. So we're still in a good spot. It would have been nice to have that boost. Give the opportunity. Again, still a good spot.
And I think one thing I'd like to note here, I was taking a look at Team Steele after that last shot and really didn't have any kind of post-end meeting or between-end meeting to talk about what they wanted to do going into this end. Sometimes those are the things that you need to do. Of course, these games, because they are do or die, to keep your week alive always feels so much bigger. Or at least the score differential can always feel so much bigger than it really is. And possibly having that kind of a between-end meeting to just calm everybody down, take a look at the scoreboard, and understand the situation that you're in can be especially critical to a lot of teams. So a little bit of a note that they did not do that.
Let's see if they gather after the show. That sometimes happens. So really noted, perhaps in Coach Ford's.
Here they are getting together right now. Heard a little bit of frustration maybe in Rachel Steele's voice there, maybe lingering from the opportunity to get 2 in that last end. Of course, that last rock quite a bit heavier than she asked for. Hearing that little bit of frustration, deciding to get together as a team and figure things out. A very quick conversation there, so hopefully they had the discussion of those things we talked about. Take a look at the scoreboard and understand, yes, you are down 1 point, but with the hammer being such a significant advantage with 3 ends to play, you're having your 2 hammers to their 1, and I think it's still anyone's game here in this tiebreaker.
Sure. You know, I talked about this earlier in the week when Robin was, I'm a big fan of scripting those first 4 shots. It requires you then to have those meetings and talk about, this is what you would like to do. Those people then know what they're going to know what their shots are.
Absolutely. So after hitting on her first stone and maybe that second rock by Team Warner, not quite getting to the perfect spot, still pretty good top 8, but would have liked to get that rock top 4. So Rachel Steele going to take the opportunity now to throw a corner guard here and maybe try and force a little bit of pressure here on Team Warner moving forward.
Nice corner guard throwing it.
Looking over at the men's semifinal, it is a blank by Team Mooibroek in the 7th end. So the score continues to be 5-4 for Team McNamara. Team Mooibroek will retain the hammer going into the 8th end. Team Warner attempting to improve their situation in the center of the ice and throw up a center guard. Looks like very close, but it looks like it might have slipped into the rings.
They both agree that they jumped through the 2.
A little bit upset. I thought we were going to see an interesting situation there. We haven't seen the 6-foot measuring stick come out yet this week. It would have been
The rings are good enough.
Yeah, and it would have been a very interesting situation because looking at the position in the house right now with that red rock top 8, I don't think there would have been enough room to actually get the 6-foot measuring stick to that rock. And I believe the rule in that case is it would come down to an umpire's decision to decide from a visual look whether or not that rock was in the ring. So I thought Rachel Steele was going to give us something exciting to talk about with bringing the umpires out, but both teams deciding that that rock is out of the rings and it is not removable because of the 5 rock rule. So
There's an opportunity for Team Steele.
absolutely attempting to just make the open draw around the corner guard, but a little bit heavy early and just because of where the broom is, not having that opportunity to walk up and maybe get a tick off that red guard. So Alan Warner, I really love this call, wasting no time walking up to call for the peel of the corner. Of course, a blank I think would be a huge win if you're Team Warner, negating that advantage that Team Steele currently has of having the hammer in the even ends. I think this is a very experienced call by Madeline.
Even if she hits some of those to the middle, it could be a bad.
Absolutely. I think that would honestly be the best outcome if you felt confident in making it to make the roll to the center line. Looks like they might be close to that actually here. Fortunately, no. Maybe hitting a little bit closer to nose and not getting quite the amount of roll that they would have liked. So Team Steele, a quick decision there to decide to hit and roll off this rock, just short of the rings, and hopefully roll to another corner guard.
Even if you get a piece on the rings too, be a good outcome.
Maybe a little bit wide out of the hand for Michaela Robert. Rachel Steele calling them off to start. Looks like it's starting to move now. And I think absolutely great execution there. Going to a little bit more of a corner guard, so Team Warner going to take the opportunity to possibly make a little bit of a double peel. I don't think this needs to be perfectly executed here. I think if you can just make contact with that second yellow rock and not leave your 2 reds corner staggered, and just as long as you can spread things out, give yourself the opportunity for possibly runbacks later in the end if Team Steele ever does get buried. I think that's going to put you in a good situation moving forward.
They like the execution of that shot. Hard place for Rachel to generate 2 points here.
Absolutely, and of course didn't roll out of play, and so deciding that they might want to hit that rock side 12, but coach wants to have a little bit of decision here. Timeout board in action out there on the sheet, and we'll listen in to see what his thoughts are that he has say that didn't trigger a play. So there is still a corner guard out there, albeit in maybe a very difficult place to get a rock around. I think the idea here of the timeout is maybe to talk a little bit about going around that corner guard right now.
I think we will have a conversation about that because it is set up position could actually require. Obviously, they come around if they won't be shot because the one over on 12 foot would be a better position. But worth the conversation for sure. Another opportunity might be out down in the trees on that one 12 foot sheet and see if they can.
Absolutely.
No, I don't. Sherry had the way things gone. That's 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
So didn't quite hear all the discussion there between Sean Ford and the rest of the team, but from what Rachel said, it seems like we might be talking about still hitting this red rock, instead of making a roll, possibly hitting on the nose. And what I think the idea here is that if you roll to the center, when you're rolling to a more well-known spot on the sheet and also giving Team Warner more room for their hit to stick around in the rings. Possibly the idea here could be to nose this rock, or try to nose this rock out in the rings, and maybe that increases the possibility of Team Warner rolling out on their own hit back then you have the opportunity to freely go around that corner
I do
guard.
like that idea as well. And there's still enough rocks to be able to do that.
All right, so the Vice 84 attempting here to make this delicate hit way out of the wings and try to hold her shoot around to make it a difficult hit and stick for Team Warner.
Well done. Okay.
And she is successful in that. And actually, while I was thinking about looking at these shots, that draw to the wide wing over on the left-hand side from where we are, the right-hand side of our broadcast there, it has been played earlier in this game. It has been played twice by Madeline Warner in the first and second end. So it'll be interesting to see if they get the chance to play around that guard, how much Rachel was paying attention earlier in the game, and also how she's going to adjust to how maybe the ice has changed and how close they're going to be to making that shot.
We're calling the same thing. We've been there before.
Of course, those tiny little things can be so critical in these kinds of games. Having that ability to remember back to that early in the game and remember, yeah, somebody has thrown this shot. Of course, when you're trying to make these critical shots in these big games, every little piece of information counts. So the more that you can think back and remember the shots that have been played down each spot in the sheet, the closer you're going to be to executing them yourself.
We're gonna keep this online.
Luby in a great sweep there by Team Steel to hold that stone and keep the shooter in the rings. Although maybe the discussion that we had a little bit earlier, this may be just making Team Warner's life a little bit easier, giving them a little bit more room to roll to with their stone, and I'm sure a blank here is going to be mission accomplished for Team Warner.
Certainly put a lot of pressure on Team Steel and right then. And how they played.
Looking forward, looks like we might be going towards a blank end, which we talked about would really completely negate that advantage that Rachel Steele had. Let me play devil's advocate a little bit here and suggest, I don't think that I would ever do it. I still think I want to hold the hammer to the ninth end and give myself the opportunity to score two. Is there any situation where you might consider taking your 1 point here in 8 to tie up that scoreboard and hopefully try and go for that force in 9 or possibly a steal?
I think it all gets back to the confidence Rachel has and that she's been doing well all day. Just heard well everything what she thinks Madeline's going to do. So it's going to be interesting to see. But it looks like we are on the path maybe to a blank.
Yeah, and looking at the situation that we've had this game, I think a blank would be the smarter call, simply because plenty of the ends that we've had have been elitely open. Both teams really failing to get a bunch of those guards up, get lots of rocks in play. So I think one here, possibility Madeline hammered. Just based on what we've seen for the rest of this game suggests that that would be a high probability, and obviously that wouldn't be ideal. So I think we will see Rachel Steele attempt to convert the blank in this end to hold hammer to 9.
You're absolutely right on the board. I just took a quick look at the chart on the stats. We're into this about 125 rocks.
Struggles teams, maybe not struggles, maybe just not that willingness to really push the envelope in the tiebreaker game. We talked about these teams after U21 championships, but never really being able to make that final push to make it into the playoff round. And now with that on the line right here today, maybe both teams just a little bit nervous, maybe not quite wanting to push the envelope quite as much and take on that risk.
So now we're looking for another hidden stick, and we'll see what Rachel's strategy will be.
Final shot here by Madeline Warner, attempting to hit and stick around in the rings to make Rachel have to execute the blank. She will do just that, rolling out to the wing. So it's Rachel Steele with the blank opportunity here in the 8th end to carry a 1-point deficit, but also carry the hammer into the ninth end and possibly go for 2 points there.
You recall, Rachel's twice like this, and then Rogers. So it fits the slippers.
Absolutely. So see if she can adjust well here in order to execute the hit and roll out. Last time she had this opportunity was in the fourth end where she did successfully execute it. So see if she's learned from that experience and attempt to be very close on this blank attempt here.
So strategically, we decided to take the point, keep the advantage of hammers, hopefully force Team Warner in the ninth end. So you can see the opportunity strategy again. Look over at
Oh yeah, you gotta make this. You stick this on the button. You still have a chance for two. It's for in the pin. He gets a miss, you have a shot.
And he's attempting to
Score one here, you're fine, right? Score one here, you're tie playing. They have like one hammer each. Hopefully you keep it under control going that way. And then score deuce going home.
Possibility of 2 points.
You make the run back and miss. If you make the run back or miss, then there's a great chance that they come back up short. So,
Start this end.
and you made it. So good for you.
They're working hard to either get a steal or a force.
So now they're just freezing. So worst case here is unless we do something dumb, score one. Tie playing 9. They get hammered. We get hammered on back. They go right score.
Strategy. Drawing out to the wing.
If it's not,
Enticing Team Steel to draw around.
if it's staggered like this, that you can't touch them. Staggered so you can move them up. Maybe.
Executed well. We've got to walk over the ones which are going to play on this one. Not using that card, but we should do it for the first shot.
Unbelievable NASCAR. Yeah, I know. Like we're killing ourselves to try to get it into those spots, and they're just easily just hooking them in there.
Coach Bruce Collins offered to come and sit when I stepped there. Take it. This. Now roll around it. Move out. Not exactly what you
Action continue here in the ninth. Kind of a switch of the strategies here by the two teams now. With the opportunity, of course, Madeline Warner would love to blank this end and carry the hammer to 10. And with that, they will continue to draw to the wings here. Hit and rolls can be a little bit difficult to force Madeline Warner to maybe take a point unless she switches up a little bit later in the end and decides to take on the risk of drawing around that center guard.
It looks like red on the screen. Spencer Cutters.
Over a men's semifinal action between Team McNamara and Team Mooibroek. It is Team Mooibroek playing a little bit of a tap on their last stone, but unsure to tell who's shot around the 4 foot right now. So the measuring stick is coming out.
wonderful roll.
Of course, as I talk about just how difficult those rolls can be, they execute it flawlessly. Now putting a lot of pressure here on Team Warner. I think they're just going to settle down a little bit here, though. Just continue to make these peels Of course, we've seen all week just how difficult it can be to continue to make these perfect guards over and over again.
Oh, you found it.
The hope right now is just to peel this rock away and then hope for maybe a half miss later.
Keeping that rock, that's right. Perhaps if Rachel is unsuccessful at getting into the yard or getting into a half rock, could be a hit roll in picture this one.
So looking over at the results of the measurement over in the men's semi, does look like it is single point for team more to 188. Now a time 5-5 team McNamara in the ninth end.
So both games in similar situation.
Absolutely. So maybe interesting to peek over a couple times to maybe see how the men and women play this situation a little bit differently.
Here we go. A little bit high. Maybe about a half rock.
Definitely the important thing about this shot is the weight control. We've seen that if you do keep that weight a little bit down, like these hack weights that's being asked for, you will get a little bit curl, but any bit out of and these tend to go very straight, keeping us heavy here.
Let's see if we're impacted at all by sweeper.
They seem to like the weight, so gonna wait for this rock to curl up for them. Hasn't moved yet. Gonna really need to get a bunch of movement here at the end to get something to this shot. Curling nicely now. Get about toward that yellow burn. Absolutely, and with it very behind that guard. Oh, risk half full of possibly wrecking on the guard and giving Team Warner the opportunity to go hit that open stone. And a little bit of a quick discussion there by Team Steel, realizing that they are shot stone about whether or not take runs go better. I think for races, I think a little bit later in the end, more towards skip stones. I think I like the draw a little bit more, but I think for Vice's first right here, I like the opportunity that presents itself to remove red rock rings. Of course, I think a force is very good if you're Team Steel here. All right, so on this early, gonna need to hold it. There it goes. Starts to move now, but gonna get it by the guard. Looks like absolutely great shot there by Katie Ford to hold her shooter and sit to.
Good weight control on that. Throw up the weight too much, straighten up the rock. Gave us focus a chance.
And that's what we've seen on this sheet. Very sort of intolerant. If you're a little bit off on the weight, it can really make you look silly. A little bit extra, and it's going to track so much straighter than you expect it to. A little bit down, and it's going to jump. Perfect weight there by Katie Ford, and excellent execution by the sweepers. Definitely looks like this is going to roll out, and the confirmation from Madeline Warner. And the feet, I'm getting a little bit like hit some fresh stuff out in the wings. That red rock does hold on to the rings, and as we talked about, now that we're one rock later in the end, Rachel Steele a little bit more comfortable now with playing that draw. Of course, not the easiest hit out there in the wings, even if you tried it to stick your shooter. So gonna switch it up a little bit here and try and put more pressure on Team Warner by making this come around and putting it in a good spot. I think it really would look full.
Waiting for this to start to pick up some curl.
Line looks very good. Now it's up to the sweepers to put it in a good spot, and I think that'll do the job there of your team steel, although
Couple of half exposed.
leaving just a little bit of a piece out on the right-hand side. Possibly the opportunity for Sarah Bailey to follow them down with hack waiter and maybe remove that stone and stick around in a
Opportunity to hit and roll in front of that yellow rock in the back, then creating a jam opportunity.
Now they see that they do have a piece of that yellow rock exposed, so Madeline liking that idea a little bit more, maybe calling for board weight.
If she does get tight, she would get an opportunity to remove that. So this call is an interesting one. We think you like this one?
I'm not sure I do. I think as long as you understand the tolerance of that out turn tap, you do have the ability to be a little bit tight and make the peel anyways. I think you have, of course, when we talk about when you walk up and peel these guards and you're sort of just wasting time waiting for an opportunity where you see a little bit of a piece of a stone to make a move on it. I think that was the opportunity right there. I think now you're giving Rachel Steele the opportunity to make 2 perfect guards, of course, which is a lot easier than make the team making 6 to 8.
Exactly.
Here, if she can put up 1 good guard here, that's likely going to lead to a force of Team Warner, which of course is everything Team Steele could have wanted. I think they had the opportunity there, a piece of that zone, and could have taken the risk trying to make a play on it. And if you're ever a little bit peel on the guard anyways, as long as you want that tolerance, possibility of getting a good outcome, that shot very, very high.
And with that fighter in the 12 foot too. I think we make
something to look back on. Right now, Team Steel with the rock in hand, sitting in some pretty good. So, we're going to put a tight guard up. It's going to be difficult for Warner to really set up for 2 points and lead to
this line. Just a little bit of almost all the way over the center.
So looking at where that rock ended up, looked like they got just enough of the 12 foot to sit 3. So I think it is in a good spot there. Of course, if that came up a little bit lighter, then the opportunity is there for Madeline Warner to once again make the hit and roll.
It's got enough of the 12 that I think it's now made the 3rd shot. Overhead camera.
Play on these top 2 rocks now and at least opening up that path to the 4 foot.
I think that's what they're talking about.
I think if you play the double over the top of that stone top 4, you're looking like you're pretty close to possibly making that roll behind the corner guard as well. And if you can do that, leave Team Steel sitting 1, but if you can sit 2nd and 3rd shot, you're going to put a lot of pressure on Rachel Steele to make sure that her rock ends up in a good spot to not possibly give up a big score. And looks like that's what they figured out here. Looks like they are going to attempt to do just that and make this double over the top.
Again, they have a chance to not only double, put it together. The thing they could double the back one as well. It's the roll of this rock that is very violent. Less ice.
Time out.
Yeah, and I just good way here to make sure that you make a double. You pressure to defend want to go. attempting to hold the line to make the double. Enough to avoid the jam. Does stuff that yellow back eight, but like we said, made the double. Gonna really make Rachel Steele think here about what to do. You need to hit red. If you get your not happy, you're gonna try to be a little here. Make it really out to the top, cut down the scoring area.
Making sure this is done.
They're in a timeout. Was there ice on the ground? I was like, oh. These old.
She gets to the top four.
Opportunity for Rachel Steele and cut opportunity. Warner, of course, house east. Their fours are really there. Now switching to try and finish. Needs a good piece of the 12-foot, and they will get it far enough. So it is full top 12. Absolutely. There he is there, double there on those yellow stones, and looks like it's gonna, you'd have to be very close to that red. Maybe worth taking do. So it's our first opportunity to see Coach Ruskoff possibly seeing that might be an opportunity to put a multiple point on the score here. And here's my discussion looking at this shot. Of course, let's say you don't make it, as long as you miss it the right way. Let's say you nose this stone. You give up a steal of one, you're down one with the hammer in 10th end. I think that's a pretty good.
They showed it to me a long time ago, so I like it. It's nostalgic now.
We're gonna make one here, boys.
Curb.
What's that? Oh yeah, and over. Great. Terrible.
Triple's not there, is he?
So a great discussion there by Bruce Cox with the team, of course. Just making sure that the team discussed the possibility of the double in, the risk and reward. Of course, the team not really liking it, knowing that they have to play it very close to their red stones. If they ever caught a good piece of that red, of course, a steal is two, not what you want. So looks like they might have decided to maybe hit this back stone just to make sure that they get their one. And if they do roll out, of course, down one width isn't a bad spot.
Worried about the over curl, trying to make the double, kicking that red and potentially getting two. Going home, that would be able to make 2,000 more. So they'd be happy with the hit and stick on this for one. They'd also be happy if they didn't roll out. They give up the stick.
Absolutely. It comes down to that age-old discussion of being up one with or down one without. Of course, every team having their own preference, and so it comes up to what Madeline Warner would like to do. Sounds like she does want to take her one here and go up one without into the 10th end.
No hit can roll, but still stays for one. So you have a 1 point game.
Maddie Warner successfully executing the hit for one to take a 5-4 lead into the final end here of this tiebreaker game here on Monday morning. Championship Monday here at the 2020 Curl on Under 21 Men's and Women's Provincial Championship in Guelph, Ontario.
The backhand is so feeling very strongly, especially taking the advantage over the skip position. So if Rachel's in a position to have a draw to a two, I think she's going to feel pretty confident with that.
Absolutely, and taking a look at the scoreboard, twos have been pretty scarce. So I think if you're Team Warner, you're fairly confident in this situation that the way the game has gone, you should have the opportunity to possibly get at least some kind of force here to go to the extra.
Yeah, and if I look at the charting again, we're seeing degrees of difficulty down at least on here and this one. So again, speaks to the perhaps the junior guy.
He keeps catching that spot. I think it's okay. You can hit it and get us one. I just wouldn't. We need to come over half of ours again.
Looks very close.
But he's
Close to rolling two on the corner guard.
It's not an easy shot.
Unless he's just bombing the double.
I think maybe just a little bit too much weight there. I thought they hit a pretty good spot. They only hit about a quarter at most of that stone. Maybe just a little bit too much weight though. Removes the rock from play. And actually, interestingly enough, there we did see both Madeline Warner and Sarah Bailey sweeping that stone. Of course, a few years ago, at the Canadian level, that would not have been allowed. Only the person controlling the house would have been able to do that, but there was a rule change a few years ago. Of course, at the Worlds, you were always allowed to have as many sweepers as you wanted on those stones, and with the rule change a few years ago by Curling Canada, that is now allowed at the Canadian level.
It is, and actually at the world level, it's still defined as the light and the
Okay, so you can only have the two maximum, and of course there we did see the skips and the vice. Sarah Bailey coming in to help her sweeping that, so a lot of talk of rules today, but nothing really ever coming out of it, eh, Perry? Alright, so looking over at the men's semi-final action, it was a steal of one by Team Mooibroek in the 9th end to take a 6-5 lead going into the 10th end here. So exact same situation once again that we're seeing in our own tiebreaker game. Team McNamara down one with the hammer will attempt to score two to win their game in 10. A great shot here by Megan Ford. Great adjustment there, and you see that a lot when that first tick is missed. Generally don't want to take in the risk of missing it once again and giving the other team the free opportunity to get a third rock in there. So excellent adjustment there by Megan Ford to put that rock in a great spot for Rachel Steele. Top four and still leaving a lot of room for their second point.
Shannon Warren, follow that up with another good shot. Freeze.
Maybe getting a little bit wide here, Madeline Warner, indicating to her sweeper that no need to go for line, have plenty of room and possibly may need to try and finish it here to try and get it buried. Doesn't look like they're going to make the freeze, so going to try and wrap it right around. A fairly good result there. Does sit shot stone and maybe leaves enough for Rachel Steele to follow down and tap it out. I know that making a play on that stone in the 4-foot, of course, has a little bit of risk to it because you are leaving those center guards up, but by peeling this red guard, remember you are exposing your own yellow shot a little bit, so possibly may give an opportunity to Team Warner to remove that yellow rock and maybe just negate that great shot by Megan Ford. Saying no thank you to my suggestion, deciding to go maybe a little bit all in here to throw another guard to guard their shot stone.
I didn't look at it.
I don't know, Barry. I thought, like, I guess maybe if it's later in the end, you probably do make a play on that yellow stone just to eliminate any kind of risk. Do you like the guard for right now, though?
Probably thinking, I'm steal. Win the game, I'm gonna win it by steal.
Of course, and we saw a similar situation in the Kimmel to Shane game last night where Mackenzie Kimmel did go all out to try and ensure that they would have the opportunity to try and steal. Ended up giving up the 3 points to lose that game in the 10th end. So we'll see if Madam Warner can maybe execute their shots a little bit better here if this is the decision to go all in a little bit.
This is coming a little bit deep now. You can put it on the corner of that,
I'd be saying,
again, not a bad result.
I think they got it to curl enough that it's going to be very difficult for Team Steel to get enough to the inside to not move their yellow rock.
you can't peel it. I mean, you could just say, if it was a peel, you could peel
Possibly
it.
might be looking at a back line weight come around top here.
Is it cut on the inside of the
I
wall?
think this could keep going with it. It's just figure you back 4 and then part of your freeze on top.
Third shot?
I don't really
I really don't know if I love
how accurate they are.
whatever they're talking about here. I think,
Looping around.
Yeah. Score two.
Personally,
yeah, the way you set up this end, you did not take the opportunity to throw up a corner guard. So you're gonna have to use what's been given to you. Of course, if you peel the stone, Madam Warner's just gonna remove that yellow rock, and how are you ever gonna get two to win this game unless your plan is to try and steal the extra, which of course is very
you said
difficult
always
at
the
this
side of
level.
matter, right? Because they can score 2 or 9.
I don't know, I think I really loved their first thought of maybe trying to come down with a little bit of a heavy draw and try and move things around to get things in good spots, but absolutely, so they've executed this shot perfectly, but
I think you gotta go.
if you're Rachel Steele, like, where are you gonna go to win this game?
I guess we're thinking the influence.
Putting on the guard.
Going for the steal all day. And you give him 5 shots to make it.
Yeah, they can keep replacing the top.
Right, so that's 3 shots in a row that I haven't been able to predict. I think I'm just gonna take a step back here and just be quiet for the rest of this and then enjoy some excellent curling action here as we finish up.
Oh yeah, you can guess, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and I see this a lot at this level. A lot of people are really more afraid than I think they need to be of going to an extra end. I think when you're in this situation, you need to realize if you're Team Warner,
I think they're going to
going to the extra end with Hammer is like, of course, you would have loved to be going into 10 tied with the Hammer, right? Obviously, that's a great situation. So why are you so afraid to go to 11 tied with the Hammer? Of course, maybe the ice breaks down a little bit, but we've been seeing the ice so consistent all week. I really don't think that's going to be an issue.
follow.
I think just some interesting calls by both sides here, really not taking advantage of some of the opportunities that are being given to them. This one a little bit wide. Definitely needs to curl to make contact. It will just touch that center line rock, but redirect to make the angle run back for Maddie Warner. Now I like the center guard. So Maddie Warner going to try and put up a great guard here, and Team Steel's looks to be in quite the pickle here, Barry.
They got consolidating down the stage and making a good shot. Again, Sarah showing her best sweep sniffles technique.
This may over curl a little bit. I would have liked. Not really sure what the call was by the sweepers there. Really not wanting to stay close to that one, but I think the weight was okay. Maybe an early sweep there could have pulled that rock out and possibly given them the opportunity for it to stay in a good spot. But unfortunately, over curls, and maybe the possibility of Rachel Steele getting something set up here. If she can make it come around and possibly freeze that shot stone, or maybe bump it a couple inches, maybe giving her the opportunity to possibly now use these stones in order to score her 2 points.
Yes, that was our key shot right there.
So just listening to the discussion here by Rachel Steele, unsure about quite how they want to play this situation, so they will call the timeout, and we'll see Sean Ford go out once again and have a discussion with them about maybe what they want to do here. If this was me looking at all these red stones in play, yeah, you gotta make sure that you are able to score your 1 point. Looking at the way things are, though, it's gonna be fairly difficult, I think, to run away and try to open up the center in order to do that. I'm really inclined to maybe try that freeze on shot stone. I don't know if you're seeing anything different though. Yeah, and if you make the freeze tap, you may actually even force Team Warner to blast it out, and then of course you're just opening your own scoring area. You're giving yourself more room to work with.
Simple draw. Just need to be good. Just check the shit. If we can't execute that shot, then we're eliminated. 2 shots to win the game. Either of those are either game. I'm not gonna say game over, but it's really good. We were not able to finish. We missed the whole 6 feet. I'm thankful that story of the cap for if they hit it. That's what we did. It's a simple situation. We have no shots from us. 3 more shots. I'll go inform though.
How you doing, Charlie? A little stressed?
No.
Rachel was maybe a little bit worried that if she does make the perfect freeze, of course, red will still be shot stone. She was a little bit worried that Team Warner would just go again, but I think you sort of, at this point with the situation the way it is, you have to take on that risk a little bit and just make the perfect freeze, get something set up for yourself. If you ever get a half shot,
It'll just run with screens and they were tight light. Just give
of course, no matter what, you're always going to have that return grab of the button to score. The 4 foot that Rachel Steele may be able to use on her shot, trying to make it very this rock wide. Not going to help Team Steele as they move forward in this end, and giving Maddie Warner another opportunity to put a good guard up. If you're Rachel Steele, you're doing everything you can right now to figure out what that draw weight is to the button on that entering side, possibly talking to your bystanders to figure out what that is. I think that's all you're going to have.
We're going this way.
Give them any words of wisdom.
Tell them to put it in the middle.
That's my dream. That's my dream.
Those are great words.
That's my dream.
Get a yellow one into the middle.
First shot here for Maddie Warner, really trying to do everything she can to lock down this side of the sheet and secure the rock there on the button against Rachel Steele.
You can tap of the paper and make it right.
Manning seems to like the weight, and once again, maybe backing off a little bit. I'd love to see her stay very close to this shot. It's really throwing, it's going sideways here.
I want to do that.
Because I think I need to later.
And I just don't like seeing Shannon Warner backing off so much on those rocks. Clearly weight was not an issue there, so by backing off you're not cleaning those stones and leaving the opportunity for maybe it to grab and go a little bit more. I think maybe just a little bit of an experience there by the sweeper, not staying right on that stone and doing everything you can to make sure it ends up in a good spot.
Oh no, that back he almost.
Not like I've done doubles too hard. Like our center guard, your throat's so soft, and you're just gonna nudge it right in behind that and cut off your tap.
Yeah, that tap's gotta be they can't slash.
Throw it with enough weight so it's tip in out of the way, and then you can make the draw later.
If this shot is a miss, it's certainly possible that Warner could draw or guard the other side to block that draw to the button. So a critical shot here for Rachel Steele.
Still got too hard.
Really needs to make sure to get something out of this in order to
Like if that center guard wasn't there, and this was like
first shot at the 10th end here of Rachel Steele. Very pleased on this rock on the button to get something set up for
this is
herself.
they don't lose, right? If you make the tap.
This rock tracking wide as well.
Yes. I don't know. Oh yeah.
I all agree, so I'm not gonna disagree.
Yeah.
I all like it.
Perhaps heavier than she
About Sydney Warner, you have to think, what is the easiest shot for Rachel right now? If you rock you want, I would like to come down with the inner and maybe put it right on the top button to make things especially difficult for Rachel Steele. Of course, always risking maybe the possibility of putting a rock in a spot to let Rachel out of it. So definitely the difference here, I think, is what they've actually called, which is throwing this rock top 12, blocking the easier in-turn forcing to draw the button with the with the last send into an extra end. Of course, plenty of nerves in this game. Looking at the reflection in the glass, I don't think I've seen Coach Bruce Cox sit down maybe the past 4 ends, so keeping a close eye on this shot here as Maddie Warner trying to guard the in-turn draw for Rachel and force her to throw the out-turn draw to the side of the button to send this game to an extra.
waiting for this to grab and curl.
I think they must curl bits on it now. Mission accomplished for Madeline Warner, so it's going to be up to Rachel Steele to make this full draw to the side. Would be quite the shot here in the tiebreaker game at the 2020 Curl-On Provincial Championships here at Guelph. I think a great discussion there, just to the point, telling her exactly what time she needs to throw so she can execute this shot. So final rock here in the 10th end by Rachel Steele. Provincial dreams are on the line. Needs the side of the button to send this game to an extra end. Calling for Michaela Robert to get in. This is going to need the curl. You need the button to send an extra again, but actually not getting the amount of curl. Like steal of one for Madeline Warner. End of the week for Team Steele, and Madeline Warner will be our final playoff team here on the women's side. We'll advance to the semifinal later on this afternoon and play Emily Deschênes. Absolutely, and I talked about going into this game just how much the emotions were going to come into play, and I think we saw that on both sides. Team Warner being able to really control themselves, losing that player early, getting down 3-1 on the scoreboard, but making those big comebacks and putting critical rocks in good spots in order to force a couple steals to take control of the game, and then finally taking control of this 10th end. And Rachel Steele just coming up a little bit short on her out-turn draw. So unfortunately, their week has ended. Madeline, congratulations on the final. Looking over to the men's semi, coming down to final. Skip Stones here. Looking like a pretty good start for Team McNamara. Down 1, but sitting 2. Looks like Team Mooibroek will have to come up with a very good draw here to try and force Jordan into a very tough shot to score his 2 points. Only 2 rocks here to come in the men's final. So as we zoom out here, you can see the situation over sheet where we are. But I think we will keep broadcast rolling to catch the 10th end.
We have just cut into this game for West. All right, we're going to wrap this up after this last shot from Sam Mooibroek. We thank you for joining us here on TSL, and we'll be back with our next game at 1 o'clock. We're just going to check that time.
1:15.
1:15 this afternoon.
So to catch the end result of this Mooibroek game, and this rock sliding maybe a little bit deep. So the opportunity is there for McNamara to win this. We thank you for joining here this morning at Girl on men's and women's provincial championship. To catch the result at the end of the men's game, please tune into onchquilt.com for all the scores. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back at 1:15 with the men's provincial final. Team Owen Purdy will take on the winner of the men's semi, just 1 sheet over from us. We thank you for joining us, and we will see you then.
Well done,